Hello, everyone. It is Saturday night. Penn State just took down USC 33-3 in an overtime thriller in California at the Los Angeles Memorial Stadium. Um, obviously, an instant classic. There's so much to go into. Lyle, I guess dealer's choice here. Where do you want to dive in?
Ooh, so many things to choose from. I guess we'll start with a negative for Penn State. Slow start. Again, there's nothing that they've been able to do. Second half team this whole year, and it showed again today. They trailed 20-6 at halftime. I anticipated them trailing because they still haven't figured out a way to get off to these quick starts. But it did not come back to haunt them because Tyler Warren still plays football for Penn State. He caught the ball today, set 2 program records, breaking one of his own that he set week 2 against Bowling Green for most single game yards for a tight end, for receiving, that is. And then most receptions for a single game for Penn State, breaking Deshaun Hamilton's record that he set back in 2014. So he caught the ball, he threw the ball, he ran the ball, he snapped the ball today. So just not a whole lot of words can describe what he's done. Penn State's never had a Mackey Award winner, and I think it's about time that they do.
Well, I think I'm maybe looking a little bit bigger than that at this point. I think the Tyler Warren Heisman conversation started out as a joke, and at this point, I don't know if it's a joke anymore.
Are you willing to go that far?
I'm not going to predict it, but I'm just going to say Ashton Genty. If you miss a step, if you have a down game, you better watch out because Tyler Warren.
I'd like to see you try throwing the ball or snapping the ball.
That's true. I've never seen Ashton Genty snap the football.
Ashton, I know you're seeing this, so challenge in the air for you.
Yeah, I'm sure you watch his Penn State podcast. Yeah, ridiculous. Obviously, record-setting day for Tyler Warren. Another record-setting day for Tyler Warren. And, it's kind of a regular occurrence at this point, and helps Penn State in a huge way. He was responsible for 17 catches I think he finished with, which was more than half of the team's receptions. Allar, though, it was a good and bad game for Allar. I mean, he obviously had 3 interceptions. One of them was the Hail Mary at the very end of the game. So, you can't really count that, but it does show up on the stat sheet now as 3 interceptions. The other 2 I thought were pretty bad. Both of them I thought were just guys who were completely blanketed, with 2 or 3 defenders within the vicinity, not just, single coverage or anything like that. So I thought both interceptions by Allar were pretty bad mistakes, but hey, credit to him for bouncing back, which is something that, he wasn't really able to do in the past. When you look at kind of the Michigan and Ohio State games last year, where it felt like he just kind of folded as soon as Penn State fell behind. And credit to Allar for sticking in there and coming back strong after, those interceptions and playing overall. I thought he actually had a pretty good game. He broke his personal record for yards. That, a lot of that is probably Tyler Warren yards after the catch. But regardless, a huge statistical day for Allar in, both good and bad categories. He set a career best in yards, but also a career best in interceptions. And I think there's a lot to take away from this game if you're Penn State. I thought there are a lot of things that could have gone differently in this game. Going back to that first drive, it felt like Penn State kind of started the game, the way that it wanted to. They forced a stop on USC very quickly, get the ball for their first drive all the way down the field, like 74 yards, 8 minutes, classic, Big Ten football drive there. To welcome USC to the conference, and then they kind of stall out. They had what we thought was a touchdown to Tyler Warren that gets called back for a questionable Julian Fleming pass interference call. So that touchdown gets wiped off the board. They settle for a field goal. I thought this game could have gotten a lot differently, but they end up falling behind there after again some things go wrong. They give up that 75-yard run, and Allar throws the interception there on their, I think, 3rd drive of the game, and so things went kind of sideways very quickly. But hey, Tom Allen, 3rd quarter defense, those adjustments seemed to kind of wear off in the 4th quarter. So maybe it's just the 3rd quarter, but I don't know. What do you see from the defense today?
I mean, Penn State still has not. No, just kidding. They had a field goal in the 3rd, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So up until this point, they hadn't given up any points till the 3rd quarter, but completely different defensive showing in the 3rd quarter than what we saw in first half. I don't know if Tom Allen's just like a big number 3 guy, but whatever. They continue just going back to my point of making adjustments. But I think it's hard to kind of gauge if this was a success or not. I would lean no, just because they gave up a lot of points, but at the same time, it's also like, this is the best offense they've seen. Zachariah Branch, Jacoby Lane are terrific wide receivers. Woody Marks, this gashed that Penn State defensive line. Like, I'd ever seen the Penn State defensive line really get dominated like that before. And Miller Moss, and like great quarterback, played a pretty good game. Obviously, he had that interception when they were driving in the fourth quarter with a big play by Jalen Reed that could have set him up in field goal, get the game-winning field goal. But that didn't happen. So I think you got a lot of things to look at. I think it's a good opportunity during the bye week to look at some film, really kind of pick apart where they went wrong within. I think some tackling issues today. I'm going to look at Nittany and Tyler Elsdon as the main.
You're going to point the finger?
Yeah, I'm going to point the finger. But Nittany did have a couple of big TFLs, and especially that he had that one in overtime. So, he made up there when it mattered the most. But, yeah, but USC very well could have had an opportunity to kick the game-winning field goal, but they didn't. And you know who did? Ryan Barker. Coming in, obviously last week he replaced Sanders Sahaydak as the starter. And today he went 4 for 4 on field goals, including the game winner, made all his extra points. There's been a lot of, talk about can James Franklin get a kicker? But I think they have one. I think Ryan Barker, he proved himself. And I just think it's a great story considering he was a walk-on coming in, earned a spot. Now here he is, big-time moment in their first West Coast game in this new revamped Big Ten. And I think he really kind of proved himself today.
Yeah. Ryan Barker now, I believe, is still perfect on the season, both field goals and extra points. He hasn't been asked to do anything crazy in terms of yardage. Everything I think has been 40 or less on those field goals. But there's something to be said for making those easy kicks because, as we know, not everyone can do that.
And not everyone travels to.
Well, yeah, that was interesting. Sahaydak didn't even travel with the team. They brought 2 kickers. They brought Ryan Barker and Chase Myers. Sahaydak was not on the travel roster today, so seems like he's been relegated to that 3rd spot on the kicker depth chart. And for him, you have to think, it's going to be really rough if he ever wants to really see action again. I assume he would probably transfer at this point to maybe a lower level school and try to kind of find his footing there. But yeah, and I mean, especially for Barker, this. Maybe he doesn't have the same legs Sahaydak does. Maybe he's 1% less accurate during practice. But when it comes to real in-game situations, especially high pressure, high stress, I mean, you know what I mean? Like USC, not the greatest home field environment, not the most hostile environment. And there were certainly
fall break for them. That's also has an effect.
Okay.
Yeah.
There were a lot of empty seats there. And there was also a lot of Penn State fans there. So, but that gives them a little bit of an excuse. But regardless, the circumstances of the game dictate that those were high pressure kicks. You know what I mean? It's a close game. He was either, going up while trailing or trying to tie the game. Even the extra point at the end to tie the game at 30 was that's a pretty high pressure kick. You miss that, game's over, you lose. So, yeah, I thought he performed well. So special teams, Penn State kind of has the answer there at kicker, at least for the time being. Ryan Barker's kind of proven himself. Obviously, we haven't seen him kick from longer, and I assume his distance probably isn't what Sahaydak is. But at the same time, if he's making, if he's going to be reliable from inside of 40, I think if you're Penn State, you just take that, and then you have a slightly, shorter range. But man, I mean, I don't know. I thought one thing for Penn State, I thought the run game struggled. If we can go back to that a little bit, I thought Nick and Katron kind of struggled today with whatever it was, 3 yards per carry, something like that, and that was really interesting to me because I thought going into this game, if Penn State wanted to win, they were going to have to assert their will on the ground. That wasn't the case because it just ended up being the Tyler Warren game. But, going into the game, if you told me Penn State was going to average 3 yards on the ground and have, no explosive runs, I would have said they lost that game. I mean, do you think that's kind of a problem moving forward for Penn State against?
No, I would not call it a problem. Yeah, did they struggle? Yes. Am I worried? No. I mean, you've seen Nick and Katron absolutely dominate. Doesn't matter if it's together, one of them in a single game. But yeah, I mean, is the USC defensive line really weak? Yes. But
and it's weaker now with injuries too. They're missing one injury and one guy who was redshirted because I don't know why, but
modern day college football. But I also was looking at some of the numbers from last week compared to this week, and I think the tackling for the defensive line was way better this week. I think they missed 20-something missed tackles last week, and today they thought they wrapped up really well. And you saw it with Singleton and Katron. They're, overall the rushing attack was 3.8 yards per carry for Penn State today. But I wouldn't be too concerned because one thing that's been talked about all offseason, not even offseason, even since Coach K, Indy, stepped into the offensive coordinator role, is that he wants to get his playmakers the ball. He wants to be able to beat teams in many different ways, and you saw it. I mean, depending on how you look at it, you saw Tyler Warren, but it's like a lot. Julian Fleming, there's obviously you got that
fourth-round legend Julian Fleming.
Yeah, obviously he had that OPI. He had that they called back that first Tyler Warren touchdown. He had that bad drop, but he had those 2 fourth-down conversions that you don't win that game without Julian Fleming's catches. So, but then you saw Harrison Wallace, a couple of big plays. Amari Evans had that deep ball down the field. So you've got all these guys. I mean, talk about pick your poison. Is really anyone could beat you on any given day if the offense is really clicking. So I wouldn't really be overall too concerned about the run game, but it's something they're probably going to like look at the tape and be like, I could have hit this hole or I could have fell forward here instead of cutting to the outside. But overall, it's nothing really to worry about, I think.
Yeah, I felt like this was the second time this season where Penn State went into a game with a specific plan, and they kind of had to differ from that plan, but they were still able to win. The first instance being against Illinois. Illinois obviously kind of tried to limit possessions and drain the clock and things like that. And Penn State had to play that game. Penn State was forced into kind of a slugfest and ended up coming out on top. They had to prove that they could win just, with kind of the ground and pound method, with limited explosive plays. And then today against USC, I felt like they would maybe try to be physical and kind of bully USC. I thought that would be their plan going into this game, but we saw that it ended up being a shootout with, both the passing attacks being pretty strong. Obviously Woody Marks in the run game for USC, but for Penn State, they were forced to pass the ball today. They were forced to play from behind, things that we haven't really seen. They had their largest deficit of the season. They were down 11 points at one point there in the first half. And so if you're Penn State, I think it's a really impressive win. Obviously, if you just look at the final score, if you're, not a fan of Penn State or you miss the game and you just see, Penn State squeaks out an overtime win over an unranked USC team that now falls to 3-3 on the year, you're thinking, oh, great, Penn State struggled in a big game and escaped. And I mean, in some ways that's true, but I think we can all agree USC is a very talented team. I mean, they were ranked number 11 in the country last Saturday before the loss to Minnesota, and I think they're still probably in that 15 to 20 range in terms of, the overall team, overall talent and things like that. So this is, if you're Penn State, you had to go on the road, play a very talented team. You had to play their style of play. They kind of got ahead early because of, some things that maybe didn't go Penn State's way, that if they were to play again, maybe things go differently there with the touchdown called back and with the 75-yard run right out the gate for USC. That really put Penn State in a hole early. And Penn State adjusted. They adjusted really well. Again, second half team. We've kind of joked about that before, but really it's proving to be kind of true. Obviously the defense looked a little better in the third, kind of gave up some big plays again in the fourth, and then made a critical stop with Jalen Reed getting the interception in the fourth, and then the hold in overtime to stop USC and force the field goal, which was obviously missed. So I feel like we kind of were a little bit negative today, kind of touched on a lot of the negative things. But if you're Penn State, I think you have to be really proud to get out of there with a win. You're still undefeated on the year, and depending on what happens in this Oregon-Ohio State game, you could potentially be a top 3 team in the country when the AP poll drops tomorrow. So huge win for Penn State. Staying they're now bowl eligible. I think people have forgotten about that. Penn State has now qualified for the postseason officially, but
wait, they will now though, right?
What?
I mean, they haven't officially qualified, but now that they have 6 wins, don't they qualify? Whatever.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. They're now qualified.
Okay.
Yeah. I think maybe the first Big Ten team to qualify, but I don't know. I have to double check. But
Indiana.
Okay. The Hoosiers, potential Big Ten championship preview right there. But crazy game. Still processing my thoughts. We'll probably have a lot more thoughts on this game after I get a chance to look back into it. But I thought Penn State showed something that they haven't really shown this season. I thought Drew Allar showed some stuff that he hasn't really showed in his collegiate career. So I think if you're Penn State, you 100% will take this win. You have to recognize that there were some issues, particularly with tackling on the defense, that you have to address. But I think you leave this one really, really confident about the team. And I think the offense today showed that it can go toe-to-toe with any offense in the country if it needs to in a shootout. I think I have a lot more confidence, honestly, in Penn State than I did going into this game. But yeah, I guess that'll wrap it up. We went a little bit over the expected time today. Sometimes we struggle to hit that 8.5 minute mark. That's kind of the minimum. And today we had no problem surpassing it because we had a pretty insane game, got some free football with the overtime period at the end, everything like that. But great showing there from Penn State. That'll do it for this video. But thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.